good to be here. My name is Heinrich Arnold, as you can read there. And together with you, I want to share a few thoughts about the 7 nightmares of digitization. Let's start from the obvious. Love it or hate it, we are here because we talk about digitalization. We are in the middle of it. Okay, we start from the obvious. Nothing new so far. I've worked in my life for 1 decade as the head of R&D, actually, of Deutsche Telekom, so I want to give you a little bit more background why we are in the second wave of digitalization. And as a matter of fact, there's more to that. Digging 1 level deeper, and this is now introducing where these nightmares come from, we currently experience the effects of webification, cloudification, productivity increase in software generation, and infrastructure virtualization. Wow, right? Tough words. Number 1, what do I mean by webification? I mean by webification that a browser has more performance than an operating system. That means that you can run applications on terminal devices that carry a browser. Now that leads us into a situation where you need a constellation of a browser somewhere in the field, and on the other hand, the application that's in the cloud, in the network. And that's one of the big foundations of what we call digitalization. You have high-performance terminals running browsers on them, and you have the software somewhere which can be displayed, that can be run on a browser. Number 2, we live in a time where these thousands of software engineers disappeared who were needed to build up network infrastructures. I still remember the times when we were running major global networks on something called EWSDN, the digital switching system of telecoms. And that was constructed by a team of 3,000 to 7,000 engineers, by people from Siemens and competitors. Now, you can do a similar application with 10 software engineers. We know that, and there comes another thing, which is infrastructure virtualization. We have the software separation also in the infrastructure. And that leads to the following 3 effects. Number 1, we have digitalization in the obvious domain of the application. And we've talked a lot about digitalization on the application layer over the course of today. That's the obvious thing. The second thing, which is also quite obvious, is the systems level. And only the fact that systems are residing in the cloud makes them so easy to connect that all of a sudden you can connect not only the systems of one organization, you can connect the systems of many organizations, which some people call ecosystems. When you're able to connect multiple organizations, you connect value chains. And this is what happens in digitalization, and this is what redefines the positioning of companies, that redefines competition. And underlying of all of this, you have a constellation that's called virtualization and infrastructure. Mainly driven, actually invented by the telco industry, but mainly driven by the big data center network providers, by Google, Facebook, Microsoft. There are global data center infrastructures that enable the emergence of telecommunications infrastructure across industries. So what happens now is that the internet arrives on all of these 3 layers in all of the industries you can imagine. That's digitalization. It's cross-industry internetization. One big mistake that often people make is, okay, digitization is an add-on, right? It's something at the side, but it's not. It comes from a technology perspective on all layers you have there: application, systems, and infrastructure. So here are a few names which for the technicians amongst yourselves exemplify these technologies. You have OpenStack in the systems domain. It's very powerful. You have a WebRTC that allows video conferences to be run in a browser that redefines very much how consumer-customer relationship interaction happens. And then you have software-defined networking. That's something which people in the telco domain needed to understand very well. Now that leads to this situation which is very well exemplified by this picture. You have a production line and you have a tablet that's somehow connected to this production line. And that's only possible because you're able to connect on the three layers, on the application layer, on the systems layer, and on the networking layer. And many of you probably are here for the second or the third time from different industries, not from IT or telecommunications, but from other industries, because these technologies move into your field. And this is what happens. These technologies currently move into your field. And my claim is also published last week at the time of the National IT Summit that the obvious thing needs to happen. We need to move ahead. It's not that people are not aware of what they need to do, but there are 7 obvious things where everyone thinks about and doesn't really come across. And here they are, the 7 nightmares. Number 1, when I listen to discussion rounds like Industry 4.0, the platform Industry 4.0, where many of you participate or observe, the more structured, German-minded people amongst ourselves, they say, I don't do anything before I don't have a smart strategy. So we start with a digital strategy. So you call in a strategy expert, a strategy consultancy, maybe. Okay. But then you're also pressed for exploration. You want to understand what goes on in the Silicon Valley. You want to know what goes on in Israel. You come to Berlin. You think, okay, I need to understand what goes on there. Maybe there's something I'm missing. I need to understand that. Exploration. Maybe I need to live with these people, like the Bild-Zeitung people did for a while, right? Like Mr. Dietmann grew a beard in Silicon Valley. And Mr. Kese makes great presentations about his 3 to 6 months in the Valley. Explore, experience, go there, ask agencies what's going on. You know, make up a little office in Tel Aviv, build an incubator, build an accelerator. And then there are people who say, you know, just looking is not enough. We need to try it out. We need to prototype. We need to do design thinking in cycles. We need to try it out, look at it, test it, throw it away, improve, and again, recurring cycles. These are the people who are following the approach of design thinking. And then number 4, they're the people who have always known what's wrong in the organization, and they say, I actually know it all. I know it all. And therefore, we do this and that and this and that, and it's just the right time to do it now. It's symptom-based. They call in the IT service provider and say, okay, now it's the time to fix this. It's overdue. Let's do it. We need to save costs anyways because we are ready to go, and therefore, we do that. And then number 5, too much for me, you know. Let's hire a chief digital officer, and let's put it all on him. I mean, many of you probably get headhunter calls, discussions about the chief digital officer, and the ones who take it, they understand how ill-defined often the search for the CDO is. You know, do something, find your way, come in, just you know, come into the organization and set up your own team and define the problems and everything yourself. And you know, that's a discussion you have with your headhunter. And then there are again the other ones who talk to the M&A experts and say, okay, my existing organization is probably too outdated. I need to look into mergers and acquisition candidates. And then, last but not least, there are the ones who say, okay, well, I'm a heavy lifter, right? I need to look at the entire end-to-end process and do the entire process re-engineering. And guess what? Usually, responsible people in organizations not only have one of these nightmares, of these challenges that they think they need to take on immediately, they have all of them at the same time. and they wait for good quality time. They say, these are all serious issues, and I need to wait with my organization until we have time to solve them in the appropriate manner. And the problem is, therefore, you postpone, and say, okay, we do this at our strategy offsite, we start with this, you postpone. It's not that people are not aware, it's because it's a hard choice of where to start. And that's a pity, because the chances are actually big ones. The opportunities are obvious. Connecting across organizations has advantages in the product domain, it has advantages in the logistics domain, it has advantages for the customer. It all starts either with elements that move on the macro level, or that parts that are moving and that are generating wear and that need to be exchanged by remote monitoring and remote servicing. Adapting your organization means taking advantages out of exactly one major thing that is new to this wave of digitalization. That is across industry partnerships. It's not optimization of your own organization only, it's optimizing across multiple organizations. That's the new thing. And thank God you have cloud systems which you can connect across different organizations. That's the way these opportunities are born. And this is the way how you overcome the nightmares. You overcome them by avoiding throwaway work. Organizations that have made advances in this across the value chain optimization have found a way not to engage one specialist per nightmare and kind of organize the entire flea circus. They have found a way of how to bring all of these helpers in a recurring, connected interaction to avoid throwaway investments. It's not good when you hire the strategy consultant for a package of paper, where the prototyping people say, you know, we do it in agile Scrum mode, you can just forget about that, it's useless. And when you talk to the guy who's been in the valley, they say they do it all different. Here you can throw away the thing that the strategy consultant gave you and what the prototyping people gave you. And when you come to the implementation-oriented people, they say, I've always known this, we should do it differently anyways. This is something where you have a lot of investment, and many of the organizations that are also represented here have done a lot of these investments, but need to throw it away because they have actually not found a way of how to link all of these solution aspects to one another and produce a lot of throwaway investment. That's a pity, because forward thinking, and here's an example from the automobile industry. That's one industry which is obviously very imminent in Germany, and it's one industry where there are very close discussions between Telekom, Detecon, and the respective companies. Benefits greatly from the circumstance that you're able to carry through the entire digital logic of the value chain from the inception of the product at the early stage where parts are being machined throughout the entire value chain, and everyone participating there up until the end user, or the other way around, understand the end user and be able to carry through the entire logic back to all of the participants in the value chain. Be it connecting the logistic issues, being able to answer the sample of one question, and the likes. This is where the big benefits come from, when you're able to connect across the borders of the organizations to one another, the different players. Now you say, okay, you know what, how does he justify to talk like this to us? And one of the justifications is, of course, you know, is the organization Telekom trying this by itself? And yes, it is. Is magenta the color of innovation? Maybe, but magenta is definitely always good for a good surprise. And here it is. Number one, there are the obvious things, the products part, the ones which we know as consumers, the ones which come from the enterprise part. Now, they are being supplemented and they benefit from the circumstance that there are a couple of spin organizations, like the Hubraum, which is here in Berlin or in Warsaw or in Tel Aviv, the innovation department that tries to link the definite elements into a larger logical chain. What we understood also is that consultancies are a little bit like a lubricant in the machinery. You need people who take care of the entire process between the different organizations. And so often, as a large organization, we threw them out. We said, hey, you know, a big organization, we don't need consultants. We can do it by ourselves. But fact is, when you throw out the lubricant, the engine doesn't really run well anymore. So I'm now a deep believer into the value of consulting organizations, as a matter of fact, otherwise I wouldn't work for one, to make sure that these interconnections between the organizations actually work. And then last but not least, what you might hear in the press these days is that the digital twin of Telekom exists as well. It's called IMER, and it's being launched as we speak in Slovakia. And it's honest effort to put the entire value chain for the customer when it comes to access and communication into a 100% online manner. It's a digital twin. We are not exempt. Everyone will face the issue of thinking through these 7 challenges in a manner that there is as little as possible throwaway investment being created. Thank you for your attention.